Welcome to Saturday. How is everybody today? It's looking a bit grim here. It's a bit overcast. We've had quite clouds for, it seems like, I would say the last 3 days. Where's the sun hiding? That's what I want to know. Where is the sun hiding? If you know its whereabouts, can you please let me know? If you get an opportunity to speak to the sun, can you pass on my regards? And can you ask if it can move itself up the country? It's much needed in the northeast of the country, so, just give it a gentle push. So here we are, Saturday the 3rd, Saturday the 4th of September, I believe. That shift of seasons, we've come to the end of summer, we're coming into autumn now, and I think when I was thinking about the change of seasons, one of the things that really kind of resonated with me is that kind of how you move through the seasons. So, if you think about it, when you're born, it's kind of like it's spring, it's beginnings, it's that newness, life beginning, and then you go into summer, and summer is kind of that, the youth, isn't it? It's that exuberance, it's going through those early decades and just enjoying the warmth of your life and what you're creating. And then you get into autumn, and autumn is maybe when you're sort of in that wisdom part of your life, when you're looking at all that you've built, you've had the experience of a life lived, depending on what point you're at. I guess you can come into autumn at different times of your life, but you're aware that after autumn comes winter, and winter is that time where everything stops and quietens, rather. It goes under the ground, it's hibernation. But the other thing that I also think about is winter also really kind of reminds me of death. And so kind of the theme for today, for this little talk with you, my thought for today is death is a 5-letter word. It really is. It is a 5-letter word, and it's quite interesting when I think about it being a 5-letter word, because for me 5 represents change, and it can be positive change, it can be good change, it can be bad change. It depends how you actually view it, but change is a constant. And again, when you bring it back to the cycle of how things work, we can so easily fall into that. If I don't think about it, then it's not happening, it won't happen. But you know what? As you come into the world, you live through the experience, and guess what? You go out the other side. So as much as you don't want to think about it, actually, death is a part of life. It's a part of the same cycle, and as much as you might not necessarily want to think about it, you actually owe it to yourselves to give it some consideration, because if you have a good beginning, then surely it makes sense to have a good end too. I think that's equally as important. So, why have I started thinking about this? I think it has been prompted by the change of seasons. I'm just really aware of the fact we've had all of this beautiful warm weather, and just the last few days where it's been a little bit kind of overcast and a bit cooler, and there's been some rain. It just shifts your focus a little bit, doesn't it? So that's kind of where I'm at. I've written myself some notes as well, just to make sure that I cover everything off. So I've been having a read through this morning a couple of things actually, and it all sort of ties in together. It's really interesting. It's like I tune into stuff, and I'm tuning into what's happening with other people as well, and I don't always know that that's what's happening until I then have the conversations. So I'd been thinking about a client that I'm working with, and just thinking about, what kind of healing method I was going to be using. I really was kind of drawn towards doing Reiki, particularly today. And I had also been thinking about like my end of life skills course that I went on last year. So I dug my little book out, and my lovely friend Sam from Aurora Star, amazing lady, does so much really good stuff with end of life, and she's a soul midwife. So last year I actually went on one of her courses, so I did an holistic end of life skills. And one of the things that we did on that course, she dug out these cards, which are called, I don't know if you can see that, they're called Grave Talk. Because is it a Western thing? Is it a British thing? We're not always very good at talking about our emotions, and I think the thing with death is there's so many emotions tied up in it. It's like it's being confronted with mortality, so you're aware that you're going to be losing somebody, whether you're losing them like slowly, or whether they just suddenly go and you're having to kind of get used to the fact that they've gone. But then it makes you confront your own mortality as well, because as much as you don't want to think about it, it's the only thing you can be certain of. You're going to die. It's part of the cycle. So I started reading through my book again, and then I got my cards out, and I thought, I'm going to have a bit of a shuffle through, because I knew I was going to be doing this, and it'd be really nice to actually have a card to work off as well. So randomly, can't remember how many cards are in the pack, but there's a few of them, and randomly the card that came out was this one. So I don't know if you can see that. And it was just so spooky in a way, but not spooky. Because when I was then having a conversation later on after I'd pulled the card out, that really resonated with the person I was talking to. So it's like I'd actually tuned into them without even realising I'd tuned into them. And I know when I read this myself, because for most of us, our first experience of loss, of death, of the grief and bereavement cycle will be when you lose a pet. So I thought about that for myself, and I couldn't remember specifically. Well, actually now when I think about it, yeah. So when I was growing up, we had dogs and cats, as most people do. I don't remember having anything else. Oh, goldfish. Actually, yeah, we had goldfish too. And I think we also, I do remember tadpoles. Yes. So quite an interesting mix of little lives that actually came into my life when I was growing up. So I know when I was at school, there was a teacher there who used to bring in tadpoles every kind of spring, I guess it would have been, and we used to bring in our little jars, and we used to take some tadpoles home with us, and look after them as much as you knew as a 7-8-year-old, however old I was, 9 years old, however you knew how to look after tadpoles. And sadly, most of them died. I think, when I look at it now, a very strange thing to do, really. I think not fully understanding what you were doing. Yeah. But I do remember one year actually having them get past that tadpole stage and getting their little legs and I think one year I actually got like a little diddy frog that was in the garden, which was really beautiful. But yeah, that would have been my first experience of actually seeing life and seeing it die. Lost a couple of dogs when I was growing up as well. But my first real experience, I suppose, of actually the death of a pet would have been when I was in my 20s. I had this really beautiful little cat come into my life. She was just the most gorgeous little all black cat. It was just beautiful, beautiful. Morning, Farney. Hope you're well. And I just loved her. I just loved her, loved her, loved her. And she went missing one day, and I didn't know where she'd gone. And I was kind of beside myself. And I went out looking for her, and I found her, and sadly she died. You know, there wasn't a mark on her, so I can only presume that maybe she'd caught a glancing blow from a car, maybe, and perhaps had died from some internal injuries, or whether she'd eaten something and you know it hadn't been good for her. I don't know. But I do remember that feeling of being so completely bereft and devastated, and it really made me realise just how much I'd loved that cat. I loved her beyond anything else I had in my life at that time. And it kind of it shakes you, because it was an unexpected death. You're going through that grief and bereavement cycle, and you know, even now when I think about it, I'm still touched by such a beautiful soul energy that cat was. She was just so lovely. She really, really was. Yeah, she was beautiful. So my next experience after that, well, I suppose when you're a mum, when you're a mother, and you've got daughters or sons, you know, whatever it is, whatever you've got, you go through loss of pets through them, really. So you know, rabbits and guinea pigs. Hamsters, goldfish, birds. Oh gosh, there's so many different ones that you experience their grief with them, really. But I suppose the next big one would be, again, losing a dog this time. You know, going back a few years ago now. Family pet that, right from when my girls were little, had been there right from kind of, you know, toddlership. And yeah, just that suddenly being aware of the fact that he was really seriously ill, but not immediately grasping that, and going through a few phases, you know, a few weeks of just whatever you were trying wasn't actually making a difference. And that was hard. It was hard for the girls, because it's that, you know, it was their first experience of losing a pet, and you feel their grief too, you really do. And I know, I think for me, my losses seem to be tied in with cats. So, you know, I had 2 cats as well, going back a few years ago now, and I lost both of them within 6 months of each other. And one, I think, was a total shock. Just suddenly, they were taken very seriously ill, and I remember taking them to the vets, and not really being prepared for the fact that there was something really seriously wrong with them. It's that sudden shock of like, oh my gosh, they're not going to be surviving this, and like, how do you process that? And then a few months later, sort of coming from the other end, where I knew that the cat was not in a good way, and I was kind of able to prepare myself for that. So from a losing a pet point of view, I've kind of come through all of the different cycles, really, of having to make that really rapid adjustment to actually losing a pet, and then the process of actually having to let go as well. So yeah, that definitely resonates with me, that card. What else have I got? Yes, so bringing it back. Why do we have such a problem talking about death? Because in reality, we're actually dying every day. So whether it is just physically dying, in the sense of, you realise that you're getting older, and every day you're getting closer to that point where you will finish your soul journey, your reason for being here, and you will take all of this knowledge and learning and all of the experiences that you've had in this lifetime, you will take them with you. So it's that, being okay with that. Certainly in this last decade that's gone past, I think in a way I've been relatively, well, certainly up until the last decade, I've been relatively, is the word spared? And that's maybe one way of phrasing it. I suppose death had pretty much passed me by, apart from experiencing it with animals. I know I lost my gran when I was in my teens, but really apart from that, I've been relatively untouched. This last decade, though, that went past, where I suffered 2 major bereavements myself, but also then went through a period of loss of myself, which again is another form of death. And it sort of brings me back to the whole thought of, you are dying every day, and when you go through those different cycles in your life, that is another part of dying, because it is acknowledging that part of you, that however many years, experience, people that you've been with, when that comes to an end, that is a death. It is a death of that chapter of your life. The curtain closes, whether you kind of think of it in the sense of, if you're in a crematorium almost, that part of your life is sliding through that curtain, and the curtain is closing, and it's like you get in the spirit of fire. Every end of a passage in your life, that fire comes in to clear the way, ready for the next part to start. It's like an ending, and then it's a rebirth. And fire's really good for that, because it clears. It's that, you go through so many different emotions. You might be angry. Where is that fire? That fire's in your heart. You feel it. You might feel like you're losing your mind, because you're struggling to cope with it mentally, making the adjustment, coming to terms with it. So there's that fire in your head. You might be anxious and worried about what's coming. So that fire's in your stomach. All of the emotions, is the fear, everything that you're going through, that fire is just travelling all around your body, and you will just keep going backwards and forwards into all of the different stages. Some of them, you might skip them altogether. Others, you might kind of go backwards and forwards. So you might be happy, you might be sad, you might be relieved, you might be angry, you might be fearful, you may be anxious. Just allow those emotions to come through you. You don't have to stay in them. They don't have to become your story. That's not what emotion is for. Emotion should just go through you. Be aware of it, acknowledge it, know that it's there, know that it's valid, but just allow it to just go through all of you. Because this is what this fire is for. It is that to cleanse, to come through, to allow you to acknowledge that it's there, and then to let it go. So it was really interesting when I pulled this card out the other day. I always like to pull myself a card. I have various cards that I pull for my month ahead, and normally I'll have like a tree card, just to sort of see what tree energy I'm going to be working with the month that I'm going into. And I like to pull one of these as well, which is like a native spirit card, and have a good shuffle. And the one that came out was Spirit of Fire. So I think very apt actually. You know, you think about the autumn colours that come in, you think about the sun from the summer, you think about the warmth that you get from the harvest that you're gathering in, the having people around you, they're just the acknowledging of that change of seasons. Yeah, really ties in with fire. So that's that one. What else have I put? Oh yeah, Death is a great leveller. Yeah, it really is. It's that shuffling up the order of the pack, because let's face it, when you might be losing those above you, those to the side of you, those below you, it just makes you aware of the impermanence of life, if that's the word. I think it is. You know, everything keeps going forward all of the time, and you need to find your peace in that process. So what's really important, so one of the things that I learned on my holistic end of life skills was the importance of making sure not just that you acknowledge that death is part of the process of living, it's just finding that peace whichever way that you can, to maybe get your affairs in order before time. So if it is writing down like a memorandum of wishes and just putting it away, getting things like power of attorneys sorted out, you know, what would you like your end of life to be like? Whether it's thinking about the music you might want to have at your funeral, who you'd want at your funeral, what you'd want people to wear, what music is important to you, what readings might be important, how would you want people to look after you in your end times? All of these sort of things, you know, while you have the capacity, while you have the time and the energy to think about it, why not scribble down some notes? Why not tuck them away somewhere and think about making a will, think about making a living will, think about letting those that are near and dear to you actually know what would be important to you when you're coming to the end, and have that celebration. Start making your peace with it now. That's important. What else? A good end is as important as a good beginning. It really is. We have the whole process of, you know, the expectation. We see the lady, and we see the life growing inside of her, and we know that life is going to come into the world. But actually, when you're here, that life continues to grow. It's almost like, whilst the bump was external on the lady, that bump then kind of goes inside and then comes out again. And the bump that is you continues through your life up until the point that that bump then will go back inside. So actually throughout your life, you are still that beautiful creation. And if you think about it that way, as you go through, why not think about how a beautiful beginning can then become a beautiful end. And finally, it's so interesting how all of these tie together. So, I also like my little angel cards too. So when I'd pulled out my, like this one, I thought it might be quite nice, because 3, again, if I think about numbers, 3 is all about balance. It's the mind, body, soul. It's Father, Son, Holy Ghost. It's, you know, it's just having everything in balance. It's however you want to look at it. So I thought actually to have 3 cards would be really good. So the card that I shuffled out of my pack, and again it ties in with the theme. So the card that came out was Sun. And do you know what? I'm going to thank my mum for giving me these cards, and they're beautiful, so thank you, Mum. So what does this one say? So this is the Sun, and it says, your guidance is to take time to enjoy yourself. Relax and find your sense of humour. Treat things lightly. For beings of lightness of spirit and let me read that again. I can't read. Let me start again. It says, fun brings lightness of spirit, and the most difficult situation can be eased if you see the funny side of things. So cultivate a sense of the ridiculous. How can you bring play, laughter and fun into your social life, your relationships, your work life? When you have fun, the angels rejoice, for there is nothing they love more than joy, play, humour and laughter. So the mantra for that is, I lighten up and make everything fun. And the reason that card actually resonated with me is, you know, as much as we have really hard times in our life, we have to remember to intersperse it with having good times too. I mean, good times sometimes just happen naturally. But in amongst all of the really heavy going and hard times, I think it's important to try and find the fun. And I know when you're experiencing the death, the dying of a loved one, it can be really hard to find that. So what's important is to find the support where you can. So whether it is reaching out to somebody like myself, who can help, you know, with like end-of-life skills, whether it is reaching out to friends and family, whether it is actually, you know, finding that dark humour. Sometimes black humour is actually what gets you through. I know certainly when I was going through some really, really tough times, I did a lot of writing, wrote some really dark stuff, like dark stuff as in trying to process my emotions, but also dark stuff with the black humour. It really saved my sanity. Getting yourself out in nature, grounding is so very important. Get those shoes and socks off, get your feet on the ground, and remember that everything, we are part of everything. We are every tree, every leaf, every bit of ground that you put your feet on. We are in and among and a part of all of it. And don't feel that you have to try and struggle through things on your own. You really don't. There is always help out there for you. You just need to reach out, and don't feel that you're going to be judged in any way. We all go through these experiences in our own way, and there's no right and there's no wrong. But just don't feel that you have to go through things on your own, because you really don't. So I think I've covered everything off my list. I'm just going to have a quick look and make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. So, Ruby from Redstone Healer, what can I help you with? Well, I can do energy healing. I work with sound. I have a beautiful space here to listen. So if you feel like you need to be heard, you don't have to be looking for advice. I'm not always about giving advice unless you're asking for it. But if you're just wanting a space to be able to just come and be heard, I have a lovely listening service, and that can cover everything. from if you're struggling to come to terms with the dying of a loved one. If you've gone through death, either you've physically lost somebody or you feel like you've had death of yourself, because death can take so many different forms. If you've lost a pet, death, it doesn't have to be a member of your family, it doesn't have to be a friend. It can be anything that you have lost, because that will have triggered that grief and bereavement cycle. It doesn't have to be recent. You could still be struggling to come to terms with something that might have happened decades ago. Maybe you had to be strong for your family, for your friends. Maybe you're not very good at expressing your emotions. Maybe you've been brought up to go like, oh, no, you shouldn't show that. Maybe actually, do you know what? Maybe you've got too much fire inside of you. Maybe you've got too much anger, too much rage, too much hurt that you've had to swallow down and sit on, and that's not good. That needs to come out. However you need to process it, that can't be good for you. So as we come into autumn, as we are thinking about gathering in and the harvest, as we're looking back on all of everything that we've planted and grown and nurtured, your emotions are part of that. Have you been sitting on things? Is it now time to gather in that harvest, to actually acknowledge the cycle, the letting go? If it is, then let's do it. So how you can get hold of me, redstonehealer.com is my website address. I'm here on Facebook, obviously. Hello. So Redstone Healer is my page. I'm Ruby. I am available. As I say, I have appointments. So reach out. You can come and you can have a face-to-face appointment. If that doesn't work for you and having an appointment over the phone would be better, if that will work easier for you, we can do that as well. If you have a group that you feel might actually benefit from having me come along, I can do that. I'm happy to talk to your group or do a workshop. I can do that too. So reach out, have a chat with me. I'm sure we can put something together, and I can do like a bespoke program for you. So if you've got any questions or queries, then by all means just give us a shout and we can have a conversation and take it from there. So yeah, that was my very long thought for a Saturday. Death is a 5-letter word, but it's not a word to be frightened of, and change is good. You just need to know how to work through it and how to feel those emotions go through you. So my wish for you all is have the most beautiful Saturday, followed by the most wonderful Sunday, and may every day hereafter bring you all that you need. So blessings to you all. Take care.